We've got Annie with us. Just some background information about Annie. She's got a background in bioengineering, a passion for helping people. Early in her career, she worked at UCAL. And one of the key things that she was involved in, which kind of speaks to the passion for helping people, was when she was working with a great team trying to provide solutions for those with special needs, and also those with some form of impairment. So it really speaks to, a character. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm really excited to speak today about just inspiring creativity. These times have been really challenging, and so there are ways that we can keep our product cycles moving without, being hindered too much. All right, so I'm just going to start by talking about some interesting ways that people have been creative. We've seen kids involved in celebrity shows. We've seen parents getting creative with their children. And then we've seen healthcare workers getting extremely creative and kind of maintaining that personal touch, which is so important right now. So the same is true for research and design. We don't want our product development to stop, especially in healthcare. It's so important right now that things are continuing to move forward. And with a little bit of creativity, we can keep going and moving forward. So first, I'm going to talk about a design challenge. So clients approached us to create a first of its kind medical device at UE Group or consultancy. So we prefer to do, the typical process where we get to involve users at every stage and check in with them as the product life cycle goes on, but that's not always the case because this project had a small budget. So one interesting aspect of this is that there were no competitors to use as a comparison to this product because it was a brand new device. And so the team also didn't want to show us any existing designs that they had already come up with, and there was no formal usability testing in the budget. And so, yeah. So how we did it is we just started by using the people inside of the company that we could talk to. So it could be very hard, but we found 6 individuals with ranging specialties from engineers to product managers that knew what this product should be. And from that, we created our design principles. And so we identified that this system needed to be efficient, it needed to be simple, and it needed to be trustworthy. Efficiency inside of the OR is so important, and so it should make the surgeon's job easier and faster, and you shouldn't have to worry that this is going to hinder their process in any way. It should be simple with minimal touch interactions because once again, inside the OR, this screen would be draped, and so you don't want to have to interact with it too much and slow the workflow down. And then trustworthy, of course, because we want to make sure that it builds trust, and when it, provides a readout of the, current situation, surgeon needs to be able to trust that what they're reading is accurate. So because we couldn't go into the OR, we started by understanding YouTube procedures of just recordings that were out on the web today. So we dove into those kinds of procedures to understand the surgical workflow for surgeons and scrub techs. And then we also asked to join a sales training, which took the form of a cadaver lab. And this helped us understand more about the environment. And then the cadaver lab was actually led by a surgeon. So we did get to speak to one person and just understand his expertise there. So we started by creating 3 different approaches, which closely follow the principles we defined in the stakeholder interview. We kept an open mind, and exploring multiple concepts and naming approaches is something that we find helpful to kind of keep different options in their own swim lanes. So we created an image-centric, a highly flexible, and a very simple concept. Since we couldn't show these to users, we decided to do an internal review And so we brought those 3 concepts together to one final concept that we would be ready to show our client. And as in typical fashion, I'm not sure if you all have experienced this, but we landed on a combination of all 3, not just one, kind of met the mark there. So then we were prepared to show our clients for the first time. All right, so then we revealed the design to the client, and after a few polishing fixes, we finalized the design. It was a really interesting situation because we ended up going more towards our design, but we did take a couple aspects from theirs as well. And then this is HipCheck was the project that this was for, and HipCheck has been approved by the FDA and is now improving patient outcomes for hip arthroscopy. Now I'm going to talk about just an interesting research challenge. So we did a 2-phase research project where we needed to understand how users interacted with a touchscreen in general. So the first part was gestures, and then we needed to understand the effects of visual treatments on button styles and what draws users' attention first. Although this applied to the medical field, we had a small budget, and talking with surgeons was not an option for just the first portion of this study. So how we did it for the gestures, I just also want to touch on, surgeons can be very difficult to find and their time is expensive. And we've also found that they can be easily frustrated by simple tasks. So we didn't want to go through kind of the simple interactions that we were looking to test with them. And by understanding the problem of just understanding that it was simple interactions, then we can see that another user group was a perfectly fine option to get the answers that we were needing. So what we did is we abstracted the medical information out of our prototype and just made it about moving 2D and 3D objects. So we created a rough prototype to emulate some of the basic properties that gesture control would create. All right, so we tailored it to a general audience so that it wouldn't be intimidating if there were scans or anything like that on the screen, so that general people would be comfortable using it. So we tested with 14 people and we tested 14 different gestures, and this came in a couple forms. So we started by showing them a video of something moving. Then we asked them to emulate that gesture. Then we asked just a couple follow-up questions of intuitiveness. And then with 5 of the 14 participants, we had a little bit of extra time in their session. So we actually did a memory test to understand if they would remember this gesture. This speaks to just being flexible within a different, within the session. If you have extra time, make sure to use it to make the most of it. And then how we did it for the visual design testing. So we showed a wide variety of different treatments. I'm showing 5 screens here, but I think we had 30 screens in total, just showing a wide range of different treatments, different button styles, and they're mixed together so that we could see what really drew the user's attention first. One interesting artifact is, so for this study, we did it with 15 non-nurse participants and 15 nurse participants, because we just wanted to make sure that we were still getting that touch of reliability for this study. And we actually found that there were very similar results in terms of the nurses at 84% and non-nurses at 84 or 88% in their correct responses. Overall, participants felt the most comfortable when using the interfaces that had the most 3D clickability indicators, because it focalized their attention, minimized wrong clicks, and maximized the discoverability of new functions. Nurses specifically mentioned that within the OR that attention and minimizing wrong clicks is absolutely vital. So the graph here is just showing that the most 3D version was the most obvious, and then going down to a flat presentation was the least obvious. And so what happened next? So we verified this with surgeons. So we didn't want to do the initial testing because we refined it from the time that we showed it to them. So instead of having them go through those menial tasks of moving things around and doing the visual design testing, we just included it in part of a larger usability study that we were going to have with them anyway. Right, so I just want to talk overall about getting creative. So when you think about a problem, there's a couple things that you can think about. So what technology do you have? What do you want to test or learn? Who can answer your questions? Don't be afraid to try something new and be able to pivot. It could be within a session or within a project lifecycle. Keep your research skills fresh by introducing new methods, especially right now. Remote research is a really positive thing to keep us all safe. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Just think about what you have to get started. And if that means doing it with a different user group, then maybe you can course correct before talking to that final user group. And how can you learn from online resources? So for us, we dove into procedures, video procedures that we found online. There's a lot of different resources online that you can use for different types of products. And what is your design philosophy? And always remember to go back to that throughout your design process to make sure that you're really hitting those goals that you had originally came up with. And then specifically right now, how can we collaborate using online tools? There's some great ones like Microsoft Whiteboard, and there's a ton of different options like that where you can draw, live in person. And then also just video conferencing, and video conferencing is a great way to do remote research as well. All right, so does anyone have any questions? All right, so can you explain more on your use of 3D elements? How did you go about that? So what we mean by 3D elements is just the button treatments themselves. So we found that it was very common to have like this flat button style, but from a design perspective, we believe that that's just not as obvious as it could be. So here you can see we have a couple of different options. So the ones with no backing, that would be like a flat button. Also, the ones with just an outline is also flat. Then we have these gradient buttons, and then this 3D button style is what we see at the bottom. And you can see these kind of peppered through the different concepts. And so that's what we mean by testing the 3D elements, is that we had a wide range from flat to what we were calling hyper 3D. And then we just judged based on that, and we were judging their first click, but then we were also judging, we kind of put them on a timer. So there was a little bit of pressure to understand what people clicked first. Did you advise the clients around the value of usability testing would add, or recommend that it was part of your project? Absolutely. We definitely pushed for it, but it just wasn't an option. So it's unfortunate. I think we definitely always want to, oh, I'm sorry, I see the message coming in. Okay. We always push our clients to include usability testing, but unfortunately in this case, it just really wasn't an option. That typical process though for us would be to do a discovery interviews with surgeons, and then creating a product. We're doing initial designs and kind of checking in with them along the way. That would be our ideal process, but unfortunately it just wasn't the option for that hip check project.
Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you so much, Annie. And again, like I mentioned, if there are any further questions, we're happy to funnel that through to you.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome.